knowledge as well. When we were discussing among ourselves in our faculty regarding the topic of the seminar, the importance of this event seemed extremely contextual in this regard. We requested Professor Goutam sir to deliver his lecture on Shakespeare, and he accepted this very gladly. Thank you for that. And thank you, teacher in charge sir, কারণ নিচে এনএসএস প্রোগ্রাম চলছে এবং তিনি তার অমূল্য সময় ওখান থেকে যেহেতু তিনি তার সঙ্গে যুক্ত আছেন সেখান থেকে বের করে এনে আমাদের এখানে উপস্থিত হয়েছেন বসার জন্য, আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকবেন সারাদিন যতক্ষণ প্রোগ্রামটি চলবে। Our department started in 2007, and now we are 3 faculty members including me, Dr. Dept.of and Professor Govindamandal is also with us. স্যারের সম্বন্ধে ইন্ট্রোডাকশন আমি এখানে দিতে এসেছি, কিন্তু it doesn't need any introduction because আমার এখানে আসার আগে থেকেই তিনি এই কলেজের সঙ্গে অঙ্গাঙ্গিভাবে যুক্ত। তিনি আজকে 10 বছরে আমরা এই প্রথম we are going to organize this seminar, কিন্তু তার আগেও স্যার এখানে এসেছেন, 3 বার এসেছেন অ্যাকচুয়ালি। তো সেমিনারে প্রথম, তো স্যারের সম্বন্ধে বিশেষ কিছু আমি বলতে চাইছি না, শুধুমাত্র এটুকুই বলার যে ওনার শুধু অ্যাকাডেমিশিয়ান হিসেবে যেটুকু আমরা জানি সেটুকু শুধু একটুকু নয়, তার বাইরে অনেকটুকু আছে। তিনি একজন সমাজসেবী, বিশেষ করে যারা বাঁকুড়ায় থাকো তারা সবাই হয়তো জানবে, ছাত্ররা এখানে যারা আছে। তিনি সবচেয়ে বেশি কথা, তিনি একজন খুব ভালো মানুষ। পার্সোনালি আমার এখানে পার্সোনাল একটা কিছু বলার আছে। পার্সোনালি আই নো হিম ফর লাস্ট 10 years, এবং নট অনলি অ্যাকচুয়ালি আই নো হিম অ্যাজ এ মাই টিচার। তিনি আমার শিক্ষক, তিনি আমার পিএইচডি সুপারভাইজার তো ছিলেনই, শুধু তাই নয়, সেটা শুধুমাত্র একটা কথা নয়, আমি তার কাছে শিখেছি কী করে লিখতে হয়, কী করে পড়তে হয় অ্যাকচুয়ালি, কারণ একটা ভালো টেক্সটকে। কারণ আমরা তো শুধুমাত্র স্টুডেন্টদের পড়াবো, বেরিয়ে যাবো তা তো নয়, স্টুডেন্টদের ভেতরে আমাদের যদি কিছু জ্ঞান থাকে সেটাকে আমরা একটু শেয়ার করবো। এবং স্যার আমাকে এবং সন্দেহিত আমরা দুজনেই তার স্টুডেন্ট, আমাদেরকে ভালো করে শিখিয়েছেন কীভাবে ছাত্রদের কাছে সেই বার্তাটা, সেই আলোক শিক্ষাটা যতটা পারি আমরা যেন পৌঁছে দিতে পারি। Now I would like to call on the stage Dr. Dept.of to continue this session from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saha. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. It's a long-pending desire of a seminar which has been fulfilled today with the presence of our sir, Professor Goutam Sural. On the dais, we have also our teacher in church, Professor Sanjay Prasad. So this is the time. Now we would like to welcome them. So I would like to request our student to welcome Professor Goutam Sural with a bouquet. Please give a big hand. Thank you, sir. We are grateful to you. Now, I would like to request our students to give a bouquet and welcome our teacher in church, Professor Sanjay Prasad. As we have very short time, so now we are directly coming to the main session. Now I would like to request Professor Sanjay Prasad, teacher in charge of this college, to speak few words and inaugurate the session. Professor Sanjay Prasad.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's a red letter day for this college. Red letter day in the sense that we, the teachers of this college, have been trying our labor best these days to organize seminars in different subjects. already we have organized a departmental seminar of political science with great success. I do think so. And today we have the honor to welcome our sir, Professor Goutam Buddha Sural. Is not only the teacher of Professor Sundip Tikait, as well as Santanu Saha. Rather, I do consider that he is our teacher, because we have been watching him since long days. When he used to teach at Bankura Christian College, he has visited here, our college, in different capacities. And today we can take pride that after teaching in Bankura Christian College for a long time, he has joined Bankura University as a professor in the Department of English. So these days I had been discussing with the teachers of different departments that in order to achieve a good rank in the NAC, the different teachers of different departments must organize a seminar of their own departments. And today we are going to organize the Department of English and a seminar of the Department of English. I take pride that we have got Dr. Santanu Saha as well as Dr. Sundip Tikait. Not only that they are teachers of the Department of English, but I do think that they, along with other teachers, are very helpful to me personally. It is their endeavor that this department is going to organize seminars for the Department of English. So, I do welcome Professor Goutam Buddha Sural, as well as the teachers, as well as the students of different departments from the core of my heart. As far as the topic is concerned, Shakespeare, be not afraid of greatness. I can't say, or rather we can't say that this is not my cup of tea. Because these days subjects have gone interdisciplinary. Even the teachers of English are writing the articles of history. That I noticed last day when Dr. Sundip Tikait presented a beautiful paper which was very much close to history. And today it is my turn to say something about English, though I do belong to the Department of History. So, these days we can't say that I am a specialized teacher of international relations and international law. As I do belong to history, despite that I had this paper in a master's degree, that is international relations and international law. So, okay, this is a very healthy habit, I think, because we come to know different things about the different departments and quote unquote different departments. I can't say different departments because all the departments do belong to us. And as far as William Shakespeare is concerned, okay, sometimes I get myself confused with what's what. I was just talking about sir in my office that sir was also accepting this fact that people or students often get confused whether we are talking about William Shakespeare or Wordsworth. Anyway, William Shakespeare, a renowned poet of England of the 16th century. I think it will be to show the light to the sun when we speak about persons like this, like William Wordsworth, like Shakespeare or Wordsworth. As far as you students are concerned, you all are aware that he was a great poet of the 16th century as well as playwright. So many dramas are famous all over the world. And as far as I know, along with you all, that there is hardly any language in the world in which his plays have not been translated. Am I right, sir? Yes. Hardly there is any language in the world. I am not talking about England or India. Hardly there is any language in the world in which his plays, his poems, etc. have not been translated. As a student of history, now I would like to say what made him to become such a prodigy, such a great, quote unquote, great person. I think in England those days there was the rule of Elizabeth. Now you will say, sir, you are history teacher starting again. Okay, but this is true that in those days England was being ruled by Elizabeth, and after the death of Elizabeth, James I had come into the power. And those days England was in a very stable position. Politically as well as socially, England was in a stable position. So I do think personally that the convenient situation might have assisted a prodigy like this, Shakespeare, to be so famous all over the world. I was last night I was discussing with myself, what should I say in the seminar? Then I made a comparison that, oh my God, in 15th and 16th century, India was being ruled by the Mughal emperors. Those days, Mughal Emperor Akbar was ruling. If we find out the time frame of this Akbar, that is 1556 to 1605. And around that time, I think, William Shakespeare was also writing his poems, his dramas, etc. So in the period of Akbar, we find a Navaratna. In the period of Akbar, we find great persons like Abul Fazl, like Faizi, and most important musician of India those days, Tansen, Surdas, isn't it? So many prodigies, so many important personalities had come into existence in those days, in the medieval period. Okay, and like that, in England also, when Queen Elizabeth was ruling, or after her death, when this James I was ruling, I have come to know from the paper as well as the newspapers and media that James I was a very good patron of art and architecture, literature. Very good patron of art and literature. Might be that because of this patronage, it had become possible for Shakespeare to be so famous. As Birbal, you know that Birbal was a very good friend. This Abul Fazl, this Faizi were good friends of Akbar. These persons used to interact with Mughal Emperor Akbar. Healthy discussion used to take place in the court of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Maybe so, sir will highlight those points. Okay, so I would like to say that situation sometimes helps us to create something new. But one thing is clear, that England those days was in a modern period. Those students who do belong to the Department of History, or you may not belong to the Department of History, but you must know that after Renaissance, modern period started in the Western countries. But as far as India was concerned, we were those days in the medieval period. Despite that, as medieval period is considered to be the dark ages, despite that, art and literature had developed in India, either in the period of Akbar or Jahangir or Shah Jahan. But England was in those days in modern period. Am I right, sir? Yes. So, in modern, not only in England, after Renaissance, all the countries of Western countries, okay, they had gone into the modern period. We were late. It is often said either after there is also controversy again, that after the Battle of Plassey, or sometimes someone says that no, after the revolt of 1857, modern India, the phase started. Okay, this is another side. But one thing is for sure, that England or other Western parts of the world were those days in the modern era. We were in the medieval period. Anyway, we are going to highlight this very important topic. So now I'm not going to waste any more time. Once again, I welcome sir, I welcome you sir, as well as my teachers, my colleagues, my students, everybody, whoever is associated in different capacity. Okay, welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We are enriched. And thank you once again for your moral and encouraging support. Now, we would come to the topic. Our seminar topic is Shakespeare, Be Not Afraid of Greatness. So there is assurance. Don't be afraid. Shakespeare himself says in his 12th night that be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. And here we have the right person to illustrate the Shakespeare's assurance, who himself visited the land of Shakespeare. So, my dear student, are you afraid of Shakespeare? Don't worry, we have Professor Sural here. So, I would like to request Professor Sural to share his view and unafraid us. Thank you, sir. Please, Professor Sural.
So good morning everybody. First of all, I would like to pay my thanks and respect to the teacher in charge of this college, Dr. Sanjay Prasad, who has given me an opportunity to come here and speak a few words in front of you. I'm thankful to the Department of English. I'm thankful to the teachers, the non-teaching staff, and my dear students. So far, what Shantanu has said, Sandeep has said, and Dr. Prasad has said, I don't know whether I deserve all those words. But I've been teaching since 1990, so 26 years past almost. And teaching has always been my love, the first love. The topic is so vast one that it's very difficult to sum up things within a limited period of time. But whenever we are organizing a seminar, whenever we are organizing a talk, we have to go by time. And particularly, I feel sorry for those students who are to settle between this seminar and the NSS program. There is a program going on, I am aware, downstairs on NSS. And some of you had to leave that seminar to actually fill up the room. Yes, because the room must look respectable. Understand? So these are actually the same story in all colleges and universities. If I talk of my university, recently there was a seminar on Shakespeare in our university, and I was chairing, quote unquote, because it was a proxy chair I had to manage. It had to be chaired by someone else. He requested me that you please chair the session. So it was 3:30, and I was chairing the session with 2-3 people on the audience and the speakers, 3 speakers, 3 in the audience, and ultimately when the session, the last speaker was there, I moved myself to the audience because there was nobody. So I know, and that's why I'm thankful that you are here. I don't know whether you will dare leave the room in presence of Dr. Prasad, but if he's not there, I have no objection. If you feel bored, and I will go for a PowerPoint presentation, but before that, let me point out that whenever we are going to, particularly at your level, you are reading Shakespeare, his sonnets, his plays. So naturally, whenever we try to read a poet, whether it is Shakespeare or a dramatist or a novelist, whether it is Shakespeare, whether it is anybody, it's absolutely necessary to know the age, to relate the author to the age. Because as we had an informal discussion a little while ago in the principal's room, we were exchanging the view that the teacher of the history department was also there, that if the 21st century produces a very great writer, he will not be a second Shakespeare. It's not possible. He can be greater than Shakespeare. A scientist like Newton cannot be expected now. He can be of a great stature, but the context, the situation that prevails in a particular time, in a particular society, that is very important behind the making of a great poet, behind the making of a great writer, behind the making of a great scientist. So that's why Renaissance, as Dr. Prasad has rightly mentioned, that actually produced Shakespeare, and before that, England was, in fact, the whole Europe experienced the Dark Age, which is the Middle Ages. And it continued almost for a decade, till the fall of the Constantinople. Now, we all talk about the fall of Constantinople, the fall of the Byzantium. But what is that? And how it is related to the flowering, the efflorations of the Renaissance? I think all of you know, but still, from my side, I think these are basic facts which you need to know, which you need to keep in mind, so that things are absolutely crystal clear. Whatever you know, you should know crystal clear. There should not be anything hazy in your mind. We may be limited in our knowledge, definitely. There is no harm in it. Knowing little, but know it properly. So, fall of Constantinople, that actually did what? That actually established the supremacy of the Turks, the fall of the Roman Empire. The Greek scholars, they fled Constantinople, and most of them, they went to Italy with their erudition, with a whole lot of book. Naturally, the first flourish of the Renaissance we witness in Italy. And what happened in Italy was, there was, because of the influx of the Greek scholars there, it developed literature and Latin, classical literature. And gradually, it was almost another 150 to 200 years that it reached, the effects of Renaissance finally reached the efflorations we find during Shakespeare's time. If we go by date, 1453, that is the date, fall of the Constantinople. And then after that, when Shakespeare came to picture, we all know that 1564, 23rd April. So I will be showing you the slides, but I have divided the PowerPoint presentation into 4 phases, because Renaissance itself was not enough. It was actually helped by 2 simultaneous movements, which was again the offshoots of the fall of Constantinople. One was the movement Humanism, the other was the movement Reformation in the field of religion. So if we were to talk Shakespeare, on Shakespeare, or if we were to talk Shakespeare, then we have to start with Renaissance, we have to start with Reformation, we have to start with Humanism. Because in all Shakespeare's plays, today, many of you, I think, if not all of you, have seen Makbul. I have not brought, Shantanu sent me all those films. I have not been able to incorporate those films into my talk. But then make it a point that you see some adaptations of Shakespeare, Bankura. You will enjoy Makbul. than either. And why? Why Shakespeare is still being read? Why Shakespeare is still being adapted in films? Think of other writers of the age. In case of them, the world is not showing that interest. It's not the case of India only, that in India Shakespeare has been included in the syllabus. The plays of the university with Marlowe are not there, that's why, or Marlowe is there but John Lyly is not there, the university wits, or Robert Greene is not there, that's why we are not adapting those plays. Those plays can be adapted. It's not like that, I think. It's the spirit of humanism which runs uppermost in Shakespeare's plays. And one thing this actually nobody has said in a very clear-cut way, but then what I feel is that when you read Shakespeare, and vis-a-vis Shakespeare you read Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson, we usually say that Ben Jonson is a follower of Shakespeare, but then if we try to compare in terms of their date of birth and date of death, they are almost contemporary. Right. And as I was saying, that if you compare Shakespeare's plays, if you read Shakespeare, for example, you are reading Macbeth, and my present student, an student of your college, he is reading Ben Jonson with me in our university. He has read Macbeth. You will be reading, when you move up to your postgraduate level, Ben Jonson. You will find the difference. What is the difference? The difference is in the language. The way you will be reading Macbeth, the ease with which you will be reading Macbeth, the ease with which you will be appreciating what there is in Shakespeare, you will not be able to do that in case of Ben Jonson. Why? Or in case of other writers, particularly those who, before Shakespeare, come under the group university wits. Why? Because Shakespeare's upbringing was different from them. Shakespeare is greater, the greatest. Why? Because of his interest in humanism. But the language, if you see, as I told you, that Latinism, the culture of Latin literature, writing in Latin, that was almost inevitable after the fall of Constantinople. And if you read Milton, the Latinisms in Milton, you are reading Milton, and you find the influx of Latinism, the Latin words in Milton's works. So it's because that is very closely related to Renaissance. But then why not Shakespeare? Is it that Shakespeare was not influenced by Renaissance? Very much. As I said, by Reformation, by the spirit of humanism, but not in terms of language. Why? Because he did not have, as far as records go, any university education to back him up. So his language is much closer to us. That's why you find you need, in fact, a dictionary of classical mythology, classical references to read properly a play by Ben Jonson, not in that case of Shakespeare. Not that in the case of Shakespeare, or if you need it, it comes second. But in case of playwrights like Ben Jonson or members of the university, you need that. Why? Because their language is so very full of Latinism. Now when we come to Shakespeare, it is often pointed out that there was no man called Shakespeare. There is controversy about his date of birth, because the date of birth is not registered in the municipal register of Stratford-on-Avon. That is the birthplace, Stratford. It is situated on the river Avon. And in the municipal register of Stratford-on-Avon, Shakespeare's date of birth is not recorded. This adds to the crisis of Shakespeare's identity. The people of Middle East and Far East, they say that he was not a man of the West. He was Piru Sheikh. Ultimately became Shakespeare and Shakespeare. That is their claim. Once such kind of an information was published by Shakespeare News, I'm not saying it from my mind. This has got a particular source. I have got that copy. Shakespeare newsletter published from America, Iona College. In that newsletter, once there was a note. The note said that the people there in the eastern countries, they claim, because when the Ottoman Empire came into being after the fall of the Roman Empire, it was the Turks. And know it for certain that Tuesday by Greeks is considered a black day, because the fall of Constantinople took place on a Tuesday. Right? So the Eastern people, they had a claim on Shakespeare even. At one point of time in our college, meaning Bankura Christian College, we organized an annual exhibition on Shakespeare's identity crisis. Not just that the birth date is not written, that is the only reason. This is another reason. Then if you see the contemporary history, there was no specific spelling of Shakespeare. I will show it, the different spellings of Shakespeare. St. John Irving, one of the very famous editors, St. John Irving, I think Sondip has read in high secondary days, Progress was a play by St. John Irving. And St. John Irving is one of the editors of Shakespeare, 1923, long back. He published a collected edition, and he wrote he didn't publish it, sorry, Oldham's Press published it, he wrote the introduction. And in that introduction he mentions as many as 10 different spellings of Shakespeare. And then there is the famous Baconian hypothesis, which says that no, a person who did not have any university education cannot show this kind of interest in humanity, cannot be knowledgeable of the human race in this versatile way, cannot write such plays. So the Baconian hypothesis says that it's Francis Bacon, none other than Francis Bacon, who wrote these plays. But then again comes the question of Latinism, the language. If you read Bacon's essays, full of Latinisms, not so in case of Shakespeare. So these are interesting sidelights. When you read Shakespeare, these are interesting sidelights, and these are ways how you can relate. But then at the same time, the Renaissance did influence Shakespeare, as I said, in terms of religious reformation. Basically, what was Reformation? The Reformation was actually a movement against the corruption of the papacy, the papal church, the Catholic Church. And I will show in the slides, phase by phase, how the Reformation actually changed the views and urged men to actually challenge religious authority. You are all aware of Martin Luther. The birth of Protestantism is associated with Martin Luther. And Martin Luther, he actually started it in the University of Wittenberg, University of Wittenberg in Germany. Right, he was a German scholar. And then that actually had a great influence in English history, because if you see the English history, it did not end with Shakespeare's time, it did not end with Queen Elizabeth's time. It continued. And I think you are aware of the Great Revolution, a century after, almost Shakespeare, 1688, the Glorious Revolution. And the issue was religion. That is very important. In India, this is absolutely a digression I'm making, but let me tell you that in India, our leaders always say that don't mix religion with politics. These are two absolutely separate issues. Look at the history of England. Even today, religion is very, very closely associated with governance, with politics. But then definitely, the standard of awareness, that matters. Blindly mixing up the two can cause havoc, as we have experienced in our country. But in England, it's no problem. And in England, it is very, very closely associated. And 1688 revolution, that is glorious, one of the reasons is that it was bloodless. But then the issue was religious. So Reformation, that is very closely associated with Shakespeare studies, that is very closely associated with Renaissance. And what about humanism? The humanism is nothing but the interest in individual, the interest in the free spirit. And in case of Shakespeare, the play that you are reading, Macbeth, it's a story of a free will. If we compare Macbeth with, say for instance, a Sophoclean tragedy, where actually we find the Aristotelian model is being followed, that fate is all powerful. In case of Shakespeare, Shakespeare cares a fig for the Aristotelian dictum. He never cares for unity of the three unities, unity of time, place and action. Although Aristotle didn't say about time and place, Aristotle emphasized on unity of action. And at the same time, Shakespeare also is making the man responsible for his fate. It's not fate. Macbeth, if you see the, I think some of you at least have read Macbeth, and you will be able to appreciate the fact that Macbeth actually is the builder of his own fate. What is his hubris? What is his hamartia? If we consider that is his overambition. Oftentimes when we read Macbeth, we refer to Lady Macbeth, responsible for Macbeth's doom. Lady Macbeth, many editors have said that she was the fourth witch. Now this witchcraft again. James I, the king of Shakespeare's time, he had a treatise on witchcraft. And Dr. Prasad was mentioning the very close link between the writers and the court, the kings or the queens. Whether you talk of India, Akbar, whether you talk of Shakespeare, Elizabeth. And I think you are aware of the fact, particularly those who are from Sanskrit, Bengali or other departments. I think you are aware at least of the fact that if we are talking of Shakespeare, we can easily divide Shakespeare into two hubs. The greater part going to Elizabeth's reign. Oftentimes we say that Shakespeare is an Elizabethan dramatist. Yes, generally we say that because in history of literature, you cannot make watertight compartments. That Elizabethan age, 1603, Elizabeth passed away, the age stopped. Yes, politically you can say the age stopped. The Jacobean period started. King James came to power. But then the literary influence, that continues. Talk of any age, that is true. You cannot just say, here is the full stop. But then, because in those days, drama, particularly drama, I do not say literature in general, I say drama in particular. Because if you see the origin of drama, drama originated within the precincts of the church. It started with mystery, morality, interludes, giving to the public stories from Christian religion, particularly from Bible, Christ's Bible. Ultimately, what happened? From church precincts, when they started to become popular, more and more people coming, church could not give space to accommodate. So it moved to public space, street corners. And when drama started getting popular, the kings intervened. Why? Because that was attracting the public. So the kings started sponsoring drama. And that's why drama of all the genres in literature, all the types of literature became very, very close to the court. And that is one reason why drama got corrupted first. Theatre houses had to be closed. I think you know, if we see the history says that at the wake of the Puritanic Revolution, 1642, which is otherwise known as the Civil War in England, the theatre houses had to be closed. Why? Because the drama was staging, theatre was staging things which was taking the society further down. I agree with Dr. Prasad when he says that James I was rather helpful for the development of literature. Yes, but then if we compare Elizabeth's reign with James I's reign, there were, according to historians, there were hell and heaven difference, because James I himself was not a good king. And it is not a very strong word if we say that James I was a profligate, immoral person. But why I say that there are two Shakespeares? Because you find, when we talk about Shakespeare's comedies, the sunny comedies, usually we say the sunny comedies, all written during Queen Elizabeth's reign. Right. And then came James I in 1603 with the death of Queen Elizabeth coming to power. All Shakespeare's great tragedies, particularly the four great tragedies that we talk of, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, King Lear, all these were written during James's period. So there was Elizabethan Shakespeare, there was a Jacobean Shakespeare as well. And how was the closeness, how was the proximity between the two? The proximity, if we look at, Tempest is the last play, you all know, by Shakespeare. And interestingly enough, for other students, if we open up, even today, a Shakespeare complete work volume, edited by anybody, published by any publisher, you will find that the Tempest is occupying the first place, the last play coming to the first. Why? Because that was how Hemingway and Condell, the first editors of the first folio, 1623, when it got published, it published in that order. Why they did it? Because that was the most recent play, the last play, the most recent, coming to the first. And the same order continues. And why I mentioned Tempest? I mentioned Tempest to show you, to illustrate the proximity between the king and the writer. Shakespeare, who usually did not go for elements like masks in his plays, had to incorporate a musical mask. I think you have seen Gopinain Bhagavan. That kind of a thing is happening in the Tempest. And why? Because King James was present, not just present. The first staging of the Tempest was done on the engagement, on the occasion of engagement of James's daughter. And to please the king, Shakespeare had to incorporate that. These are historical facts, but then these are very interesting facts to establish the thing that the king, the court, and the writers, particularly the playwrights, they were very closely connected, because if you do not have the sponsorship of the court, you cannot write drama. You have to subsist on something. Where from the subsistence will come? It comes from the court. So naturally, the Shakespeare of Jacobean period is a compromising Shakespeare. Not that bold Shakespeare of Elizabethan period. Macbeth you are reading. And again I come back to Macbeth because Macbeth is familiar to you. It talks about England when James I was on the seat, on the throne. And it speaks of England how? How is the English king? The reference is there. The reference is that he is a Christ figure. He heals people by touching. The English king is so benevolent a king, just the opposite. if you read history, if you see James's history, and after that Charles I, Jacobean, and then Caroline, and then the theatre houses were closed. Charles I was few cuts above James I in profligacy. So drama continued to degenerate, right? So I think I should come to, because I will go on talking and time will pass, so I should come to the presentation, PowerPoint presentation, to give you a methodical idea, because that will give you a kind of comprehensive idea of the Renaissance. I will show the slides on Renaissance first, then Reformation. I will not show all the slides of the Reformation, because what Reformation did in France, what Reformation did in Switzerland, meaning the entire Europe, we don't have to see all those things. So some slides from Reformation, then we come to humanism. What is humanism? What does it mean? And then we finally come to some basic facts of Shakespeare. This is my plan, right? So we go for the first presentation, Renaissance.